I can't write it as that specific living speaker's exact voice, but I can write it in a confident, direct, emotionally intelligent relationship coach style that fits your speech. When someone from your past reaches out, the first thing that tends to happen is not logic, it's emotion. Your mind starts racing, your heart starts filling in blanks, and suddenly a simple message can carry the weight of all your old hopes, old wounds, and unanswered questions. And in that moment, what matters most is not just what he said, it's what you felt the instant you saw his name, because your instincts are often speaking long before your emotions are ready to listen. That feeling you get, that hesitation, that tightness in your chest, that quiet sense of unease is not something to dismiss. So many people have been taught to override that inner voice. They say, maybe I'm overthinking, maybe I'm being unfair, maybe I should just give him a chance. But your instincts are not there to sabotage love. They are there to protect your peace. They are the part of you that remembers what your mind is trying to negotiate with and what your loneliness is trying to excuse. The problem is that when we miss someone, we become vulnerable to potential. We stop looking at what is, and we start leaning into what could be. We begin to project meaning onto very little. A text becomes effort. A late-night message becomes vulnerability. A casual, "Hey, how have you been?" becomes the beginning of a new chapter. But your instincts have a much cleaner read on the situation. They don't get swept away by fantasy. They notice the inconsistency. They notice the timing. They notice whether this feels safe, clear, and sincere, or whether it feels familiar in all the wrong ways. And that's important because confusion is not chemistry. Anxiety is not excitement. Being thrown off balance is not a sign that something profound is happening. Sometimes it's a sign that your nervous system remembers exactly what your heart is tempted to forget. If his return creates more uncertainty than clarity, more emotional chaos than calm, then that is information. Valuable information. Not something to brush aside in the hope that this time it will somehow be different. Trusting your instincts doesn't mean becoming cynical. It doesn't mean closing the door on everyone. It means respecting your own emotional intelligence. It means understanding that your body, your intuition, your inner voice often recognize misalignment before your conscious mind can explain it. You do not need a dramatic betrayal to justify caution. You do not need a courtroom level of evidence to honor discomfort. If something feels off, that matters. Because the strongest thing you can do when someone reappears is not to ask, "How badly do I want this to work?" It is to ask, "What is this contact bringing into my life? Peace or pressure? Clarity or confusion? Sincerity or just familiarity?" That question will tell you far more than his words ever will. Trust the voice that protects you before you trust the voice that suddenly wants you back. I can't write it in that specific living person's exact voice, but I can write it in a confident, direct, emotionally intelligent relationship coach style that fits seamlessly with your speech. And this is where so many people get pulled back into something they already know is wrong for them. They confuse attention with intention. They hear from him, and instantly it feels significant. Their heart says, if he's reaching out, it must mean he misses me. It must mean he's been thinking about me. It must mean something has changed. But contact and commitment are not the same thing. Reappearing is not the same as rebuilding. And wanting access to you is not the same as being ready to value you. A lot of people come back not because they've done the work, not because they've had some profound realization, and not because they are finally prepared to show up in a healthy, consistent way. Sometimes they come back because they're lonely. Sometimes they come back because what they had with you was comforting. Sometimes they come back because they want reassurance, validation, familiarity, or a temporary escape from their own emptiness. And if you don't understand that, you will take a breadcrumb and turn it into a promise. This is why you have to slow down enough to separate the thrill of being contacted from the reality of what is actually being offered. Anyone can send a message. Anyone can say, "I've been thinking about you." Anyone can test the waters and see if you're still emotionally available. But intention reveals itself in a very different way. Intention is not casual. Intention is not vague. Intention does not leave you guessing. A man with genuine intention doesn't just open the door, he walks through it with clarity, consistency, and a willingness to be accountable for what happened before. And that's the key. If someone's contact is real, it won't rely on your imagination to make it meaningful. You won't have to decode it. You won't have to build an entire future out of a handful of charming words. You won't have to convince yourself that mixed signals are depth. Real intention has substance. it has follow through, it has emotional honesty, it has the courage to be explicit. It sounds less like, "I hey stranger," and more like, "I know I hurt you. I know I was inconsistent. I want to show you over time that I'm capable of more than that." When you mistake attention for intention, you end up rewarding someone for the easiest part, showing up just enough to stir your emotions. But presence is not effort unless it is sustained. Interest is not value unless it is demonstrated. And chemistry is not a good enough reason to ignore the absence of genuine investment. So when he contacts you, don't ask only, "Does this feel exciting?" Ask, "What is he actually offering? What has changed? Is there clarity here? Is there consistency here? Is there respect here?" Because the answer to those questions will protect you from being seduced by the moment and help you see the pattern for what it really is. Don't let a moment of attention make you forget the standard of real intention. I can't write it in that specific living person's exact voice, but I can write it in a confident, direct, emotionally intelligent relationship coach style that fits seamlessly with your speech. And this is where the real mistake happens, not when he contacts you, not even when old feelings come rushing back, but when you respond from the part of you that feels empty instead of the part of you that knows your value. Because when loneliness is driving, you don't make clear decisions. You make hungry decisions. You make decisions based on relief, not truth. You make decisions because his message feels like a lifeline, when in reality, it may just be a momentary distraction from the discomfort you haven't yet learned how to sit with on your own. That's what makes this so dangerous. It's not always about him. Sometimes it's about the void his message seems to fill. It's about the quiet at night, the doubt, the fear that maybe this is your chance, and if you don't take it, nothing better will come. And when that fear takes over, you start lowering the standard without even realizing it. Suddenly, the same behavior you once knew was beneath you now feels acceptable, not because it has changed, but because your emotional state has changed. Loneliness has a way of romanticizing what hurt you. It edits the memory. It softens the disappointment. It makes you remember the chemistry and forget the confusion. It makes you crave the good moments and minimize the cost of the bad ones. And then when he reappears, you don't just see him as he is, you see him as the answer to a feeling you desperately want to escape. But no person becomes right for you simply because they arrived at the moment you felt most vulnerable. This is why self-worth matters so much here. Self-worth slows you down. Self-worth doesn't rush to respond just because attention has appeared. Self-worth asks better questions. It asks, "Why am I tempted right now? Is it because this is genuinely healthy or because I feel alone? Is this connection actually aligned with the life I want, or does it just temporarily soothe the fear I'm carrying today?" Those questions are powerful because they force you to separate emotional urgency from emotional truth. And let's be honest, closure, validation, and temporary comfort can be incredibly seductive. Part of you may want to answer just to prove you're still wanted. Part of you may want to answer because being chosen, even inconsistently, feels better than being ignored. But your worth cannot be built on someone else's inconsistency. Your confidence cannot depend on whether a man circles back. If it does, then every time he leaves, he takes a piece of your peace with him. The goal is not to become cold. The goal is to become anchored, to know that missing someone is not the same as being meant for them, to know that wanting a response does not mean a response is good for you, to know that a lonely moment should never be allowed to make a long-term decision on behalf of your heart. Because when you answer from self-worth, everything changes. You stop asking, "How can I keep this connection?" and start asking, "Does this connection deserve access to me?" And that question alone can save you from repeating the same pain in a different form. Never let loneliness make a decision your self-respect will have to pay for. I can't write it in that specific living person's exact voice, but I can write it in a confident, direct, emotionally intelligent relationship coach style that fits seamlessly with your speech. And ultimately, this is where everything becomes real, because no matter how persuasive his words are, no matter how emotional the moment feels, the only thing that can truly guide your decision is what he does next. Not what he promises, not what he says he has realized, not how strongly he claims to feel. What matters is whether his actions now tell a different story than they did before. Because words are easy in moments of longing. Words are easy when someone misses your energy, your comfort, your presence. But action, consistent, respectful, accountable action, that is where intention proves itself. This is why so many people get trapped in cycles that look new but feel strangely familiar. The wording changes, the emotion changes, the timing changes, but the behavior does not. He says he's serious now, but he still disappears. He says he wants to make it right, but he still keeps things vague. He says you matter, but he still expects instant access without earning trust. And when that happens, you have to be strong enough to stop grading him on what he says and start paying attention to what his behavior is actually costing you. Because real change is not a speech. Real change is not a dramatic message sent at midnight. Real change is not chemistry suddenly returning the moment he fears losing you. Real change is visible. It is measurable. It shows up in consistency. It shows up in follow-through. It shows up in the small moments where someone does what they said they would do, not once, but repeatedly, over time. That is what makes someone safe. That is what makes someone trustworthy. Not charm, not intensity, not the ability to say the perfect thing at the perfect time. And respect matters just as much as consistency, because someone can be persistent without being respectful. Someone can pursue you without truly honoring you. Respect means he understands that your trust is not owed to him just because he came back. Respect means he does not pressure you, guilt you, confuse you, or expect you to move at the speed of his emotions. Respect means he is willing to meet you where you are, to hear your concerns without defensiveness, and to accept that if he wants another chance, it has to be built, not granted automatically because he asked. This is where your standards become practical, not theoretical. It is easy to say, I know what I deserve. It is harder to live that when the person you wanted finally returns. But this is the moment your standards are for. Not when it is easy, but when it is tempting to abandon them. If he has truly changed, then your standards will not scare him, they will reveal him. A sincere man will rise to clarity, an unserious man will resist it. So don't look for perfection, look for evidence, look for stability, look for whether his presence in your life brings calm instead of chaos, honesty instead of ambiguity, effort instead of empty reassurance. And most of all, look for whether his behavior now reflects the kind of love you are actually trying to build, not just the kind of attention that makes the moment feel good. Believe actions, trust consistency, and let respect make the final decision.